Hello, everyone, and welcome to Idle Insights, a show where we talk with interesting people about idle champions and Dungeons and Dragons. And with me this week is the amazing Stephen Rooney. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
For those that might not know who you are, would you please let our audience know what you do and why you are so awesome?
Not sure about that last one, but no, I'm a senior writer at Larian Studios. I wrote the character Astarion in Baldur's Gate 3, amongst a bunch of others. Yeah, I get to have all the fun in the world writing my horrible little vampire boy, and people seem to have a really good time with it. So it's awesome for me, and hopefully awesome for everyone else too.
I think I can speak for a lot of people where it's been awesome. It's been, especially with now having two of these awesome characters in our game, our chat has been filled with people not just talking about our game, but about Baldur's Gate 3 and all of the experiences that they've had there with your lovely little vampire boy and some of the other characters as well. Uh,
Yeah,
so
it's great to see him escape and kind of like cause chaos in other places too. It's good.
chaos and also joy. I did, you know what? I'm just going to jump to this question right away because usually I ask some other things first. But I think one of the best things about Astarion has been all the fan art and all of the cosplay and all of the people who are expressing their love for this character through their fandom. And I gotta ask, now that the game is out, because you've been working on this forever, how much have you enjoyed seeing all the fan art?
I've absolutely loved it. I mean, like the game was in A for I think about 2 years, and there was a fairly constant flow of fan art like the whole way through. But obviously, since it's come out now, there's so many more people kind of taking part. There's so many more eyes on it, and you get to see a whole new wave of people kind of enjoy it. And it's the best thing in the world to see other people's takes on a character that you've spent ages on. So I love it. I love each and every single piece.
Awesome. Kind of a nice bonus after having worked on this for so long to finally not just see your game out there, but also this character that people love. Um,
Yeah,
I
because I
have
mean, like
noticed your social media is filled with lots of appreciation for people who are cosplaying or doing art of Astarion, especially.
absolutely. Everyone just brings me joy, and I get so excited and I want to share everything that I see. So yeah, there's very little of me on my social media. It's mostly me just going, "Look at this! This is incredible! Oh, have you seen this? This is great!" So it's a very very good time to just kind of soak it all in. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. So let's back up just a little bit. Normally, we start off the show by asking a more general question about Dungeons and Dragons. I would love to know, how did you get into Dungeons and Dragons?
Um, I think I probably followed the traditional path, which is I was a great big nerd as a kid, and all of my friends were great big nerds. So we would hang out and be great big nerds together. That one of the many forms that took was playing D&D. So I for my first exposure, actually, I'm just of an age where I would have seen like the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Mm,
I think kind of back from the 80s, and I would be like, oh, this looks great. I don't understand the context of it. And then finding out later that there was a whole game that goes along with it, and you could be as crazy and chaotic as you liked. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, no,
that's
that was it.
yeah. The starting off just seeing the cartoon. It's usually seeing the cartoon or seeing the monster manual and seeing all the monsters in there
Mhm.
seems to be two of the main ways that a lot of people got into the game. It's like, these monsters are cool. This cartoon is cool. How do I get involved?
Yeah, I mean, I can absolutely relate to the Monster Manual because I would have started with 3.5, I think. And it just had this just such a cool cover. And
Hmm.
like you go to a comic book store and like comic book, and you pick up this book that you could like do some damage with if you wanted to. And it's just full of these incredible, beautiful like drawings and the most ridiculous monsters. And it's so eye-catching. It was great.
That's
It's a
awesome.
wonderful thing to discover. Yeah.
So, when you do play just the regular tabletop game, do you have a preferred lineage, a preferred class? Do you like to be the fighter? Do you like to be the cleric? What do you gravitate towards?
I my natural instinct is always to gravitate towards the rogue. And so, but I am just aware that I will, if I do that too much, I just end up playing the same person again and again. So I'd like to challenge myself a little bit and try and go for something drastically different from whatever the last character that I was that I played. So yeah, I'm normally not very good at being spellcasters. So I do enjoy kind of picking a wizard or a sorcerer, or normally something that's a bit more chaotic. Warlock is always good.
Mm.
So yeah, I will play just about anything though. If you sit me down at a table, give me any character, and I'll be like, yes, okay, brilliant. This is great. We'll have fun with this.
And now I find it interesting that we're about to talk a lot about Astarion, who I believe is a rogue.
Now that you mention it, I believe he is actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's funny that, but
So, you talked a bit. You said that you were the lead writer and then also the writer on Astarion. So you kind of had your hand across the entire story, correct?
so I'm a senior writer. So the lead is Adam Smith.
Oh, okay.
But I've written characters kind of across the story. Like I've written people in EA, I've written people kind of the full way through the game, um, and there's a fun kind of diversity in that. But all of it kind of revolves around Astarion. Like he's kind of been my baby since the beginning, and because obviously he goes the whole way through the game. Um, I always have something that he needs to react to, or some situation that he's going to end up in, and so I will. It's like a bit like having a bungee cord kind of attached to you. You'll go away and you'll kind of like do other NPCs and you do other situations, but you always snap back to the origin that you're writing because they're so central in the game.
That's awesome.
So it's a great way to experience the game.
So when you and the rest of the team sit down to start writing the game for Baldur's Gate 3, which is this massive story with all of these different plot lines and all of these different ways that things can go, where do you all start? Do you start with creating Astarion, your baby? Do you start with an overall plot? Do you get together and play D&D and then take that adventure and go, now let's make a video game out of it? Like how does that start?
Um, it's a little bit of all of the above. Weirdly, I mean, it's a very evolving process. So we started kind of with a plot, with a story for the overall game and for the overall world. And once you have that, even kind of like a rough feeling of this is what we would like to happen, then you can start adding the characters because you know this is the world that they need to inhabit, and these are the kinds of things they're going to need to react to. This is going to be the tone of the game. So you get your plot, and then you come up with some characters, and then the characters affect the plot. So then you have to change the plot, and then because the plot has changed, characters are going to change, and then situations change, and you just do that for about 5 years. And at the end of it, you have a video game somehow, miraculously. I don't.
It's so easy.
It's
Just,
a
spend a
it's
couple
a
of
dark
years.
magic. Yeah, exactly. No, everything feeds back into everything else. So whatever point you really could start with anything, but whatever you start with, it's going to affect. It's going to be changed by everything that comes after. So
So does that mean that you've had conversations with, say, the writers for some of the other characters and had epiphanies or changes to how Astarion would be or react to things simply just on, hey, I would like to have this interaction or I'd like to have this character do this, and
mhm.
now you're thinking, oh well, I need to have Astarion do that. Does that branching kind of happen?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be talking to someone who's working on one of their characters, and they'll mention like a situation, and you're like, oh wow, that's really relevant to this thing that that I was working on, and you can bounce off each other. Your storylines can kind of weave together like a bit, and you see that um, with some characters kind of more than others. Will and Karlach are very kind of intertwined. Isel and Shadowheart are quite intertwined. Astarion doesn't have that uh, same kind of like narrative strength with other people, but he absolutely reacts to the situations in the world and the situations that the other origin characters end up in, even if it's to kind of stand off at the side and go when something terrible happens. You know, it's it all again it all feeds into everything else, and you get just really really wonderful kind of feedback loops.
I love that you mentioned that because I think one of the gifs I've seen floating around on social media for the last couple of weeks, now that the game has been out, has been a lot of them of Astarion, but especially the one of him going, "I'm shocked." I feel like he has become not just
Mm-hmm.
a beloved character, but also a beloved meme, just because of
I
his
would hope so.
reactions.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to avoid spoilers for the most part for
Mm-hmm.
those who are playing the game at home because it is a giant game. So even though it's been out for a little while, I don't know about other people, but some of us are still on Act 1 because we need to talk to everybody and look at everything.
Yep.
So we will avoid some spoilers, but I would love to know um, now that Idle Champions fans are familiar with at least two of these characters simply from our game,
Mm-hmm.
Lizelle and Astarion, I'm sure a lot of them are going to become interested in Baldur's Gate 3. For people who have never played a Larian game or never played a Baldur's Gate game, what advice would you give to our players who want to now jump into your game?
I think my advice is exactly that. Jump in, like jump in and have fun, because it's. I feel like if I gave a breakdown guide of like, oh, this is how you do the best characters, or this is kind of how this is how to min max things kind of perfectly, whatever, it would be all just really meaningless. The best thing that anyone can do is just jump in and find out how the game can surprise you and how the world can react to you. I've had a lot of my friends who are just notorious for save scumming, and they're like, no, no, I didn't get the result that I wanted, so whatever, I'll go back and I'll do it again. Um, every single one of them has been like, no, I keep messing up, but I keep playing the game because it just feels fine. The world reacts correctly to whatever path I go down, whatever choice I make, and it feels natural and it feels fun. So I would just say jump in, like create a character that seems like it's fun and seems like it reflects you or is not like you in any way, shape, or form, and go have a wander around Faerun.
I think the fact that a lot of people are not save scumming is a testament to how closely you all got the feel of Dungeons and Dragons. Because when you're sitting at a table, there's no save scumming. There's no, oh, whoopsie, we just all TPK'd in that fight. Can we just like go back to
Mm-hmm.
the save 2 hours ago? You all just kind of deal with what's happening. Um, were there, and I'll ask this question knowing we're trying to avoid spoilers, but were there any things that you were crafting in the plot that were moments of like, I don't know how Astarion's going to get out of this. I don't know how Astarion's going to react to this. Like, did you come up against those moments going, oh, this could be a problem for this character?
Um, yes, those are some of my favorite moments. I think sometimes when you kind of realize that you've written yourself into a corner and you're like, oh no, he's actually really in trouble here because if he does this, then it's terrible, and if he does this, then it's terrible, and you have to get like kind of creative, and that's where the really weird, sometimes the really stupid ideas kind of come from. But it's the stuff that makes for the best gameplay. So the more times we found ourselves in that situation, kind of that the happier I was basically. I always had a fair sense of what I wanted his story to look like, kind of knowing, okay, he's going to start here, he's going to end here. those were always pretty clear, and then it got a bit kind of a bit muddy in the middle. But it, yeah, that working our way through that stuff in the middle was sometimes very challenging, but it was often kind of where we got our best ideas too. So it works out a lot of the time.
I'd imagine those are also moments in where you go to one of the other writers and you're like, okay, I need to help Astarion get out of this. What can we do? Do other characters and other writers of other characters, do you get a chance to jump in on each other's characters and go, well, how about this? Or, maybe my character can do this and you can do that. Like, is that feels kind of like a D&D game to me. Is that kind of what the writers go through when you're going through the story?
There is a lot of back and forth. Yeah, there's a lot of, okay, well, I'm in this situation and Lizelle is in that situation, and can is there like a mutual ground where we can help each other out? Are we going to go like head to head and be really antagonistic? Is this going to be a big problem in the party? Um, it's a very very collaborative process, the entire thing, and everyone will have thoughts and feelings on how everyone else is doing. There are times when it's very much like, oh no, I'm sitting in my little bunker and it's just me, and it's just me and a keyboard and just kind of trying to make it work. But there are also those wonderful kind of moments where you're sitting around having lunch and just being like, I just can't get this thing right. And then someone else just throws out some brilliant idea that you'd never have thought of in a million years. And then you rush back to your desk and kind of make it happen. So it's a lot of fun. I get to work with a fantastic team. So I'm very lucky in that respect.
That's awesome. And you talked about how, specifically for Astarion, but for all the characters, you're like, this is where they start. This is kind of where they end. Because the players have so much agency in how these characters literally survive, but also if they change
Mm-hmm.
or not. Do you have to come up with multiple endings for these characters? Do you have to come up with like 4, 5, 6? You don't have to give a number to it, but a bunch of different outcomes, essentially.
We will, while we're planning the character arcs, we will normally be thinking, okay, well, this is how things go if at the very most basic level, good ending, evil ending. And that would be kind of the four, because you want to have that choice. You don't just want to sit a character on a little train track and go, you're going to just chug through the game and then you're going to arrive here. It'll be fine. It's a player choice and player reactivity is so important. So we do plan for different endings, and then as you're actually making the game, different character traits will emerge, different situations will emerge, and they're like, okay, this is going to affect this in a different way, and this is going to affect that in a whole other way. So while we largely try and keep things limited to like a sensible number of endings, because you could have nearly infinite, but there's so many little details in kind of people that you saved or people that you died along or people that died along the way. It's yeah, there's a lot that you have to account for.
Mm. So let's dive a little bit more into Astarion, who, is one of the first champions characters you get a chance to meet in the game, and certainly has his own arc depending on what the player character is doing. When we were bringing Astarion into Idle Champions,
Mm-hmm.
what was like one or two of the core things that were the most important about his character that needed to be represented when you were helping us bring your baby into our game? What were like the couple things you're like, he has to have this in order to still be him?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not really a spoiler to say that when you meet Astarion, the first thing that he does in the game is pull a knife on you. So he has a very uh, he has a certain appreciation for violence, I guess, a bit of a murdery streak. So I think it's important to have that. And also, he's a vampire. He's all about blood, and he's all about kind of those darker sides of humanity. So it's important that that's represented in the game. But at the same time, he is he is really fun. He's really fun to write. He's really fun to have in your party. And it's very important for me that that is also represented. Those are kind of the two sides. It's gonna stab you, but will have a smile on his face as he does it. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of him in a nutshell.
And you might apologize for it afterwards, depending on how the conversation goes.
Yeah, maybe.
The fun thing about that duality of like, all right, he's a vampire, he's all about blood, but also he's kind of this sarcastic, fun character. I like that he is not your cliche, brooding, dark, always kind of emo
Mm-hmm.
vampire. Like he's got, in a weird way, a lot of fun personality to him. And like he's a rogue, but he's dressed in like fancy clothes, and
Yeah.
he's very charismatic and personable.
Mm-hmm.
Were you was that just how you crafted Astarion from a gameplay and a character perspective, or were you thinking of like, let's make sure he's not Dracula, let's make sure he's not these super cliche vampires?
Yeah, I mean, if at any point I had put a super cliche vampire into the game, it would have been shot down just immediately. That is not how Larian rolls, and as wonderful as that is, it does make it challenging. It does come with its challenges as well,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll write a scene that you think is really great, and someone will be like, "No, this is we've seen this in like a dozen other games. You know, it has to be different. It has to be original. It has to be new." Um, So that's one of the great and challenging kind of challenges about working on a game like this. Um, the main thing with the Astarion's character, I think, was just trying to get a sense of fun into him. He could. It would be very easy to write a character that was very unlikable in Astarion, and we absolutely didn't want to do that. Like he's kind of he's a bit terrible consistently throughout the game. He's awful in a whole lot of ways. But at the same time, he needs to be charming, and he needs to be someone that you actually want to have around, because you're gonna be with this guy for hours and hours. If he's like it's a long trek through
Mm-hmm.
this game. So you gotta make sure he's engaging, you've got to make sure he's fun.
He's that nice line of like he's doing the terrible things, but he's so fun to be around. And yeah, maybe he's got a point about the terrible things he's doing. And, maybe he's going to sway the player over to his side of seeing things a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that would be the gold standard. If I hit that even most of the time, I'm extremely happy.
So when you're writing Astarion, obviously there's the words on the page and everything, and crafting the character themselves. Once it gets into kind of the rest of the gameplay mechanics, how much input do you have into things like his movements in the game or his statistics as a D&D character, or the voice acting that he has?
Um, a lot of those decisions are kind of made without me in the room necessarily, but at the same time, I do get to have a lot of input in terms of um, with his stats, for example. If someone comes out and says, "Well, here's his stats," and there's something in there that doesn't make sense to me, I can always say, I can always point it out. I can always be like, "I look, this doesn't really work for the character for these reasons," and like it would nearly always be changed. Um, we're very lucky that I get to work with people who know a lot more about the stats and kind of the technical side than I do. So for the most part, I was just like, this is great. This is wonderful. And I just get to be along for the ride. The one place where we're a bit more involved is the voice acting. Um, we we didn't work very much like directly with the voice actors. We weren't like directing them in the booths or anything. We had wonderful voice directors who took care of that. Again, much better at it than I would ever be. But they were we did when we were writing the lines, there was little context, kind of places you could enter context. So I could say like just a little bit of anger on this line, a little bit of sadness. This is what you're thinking about. So it's kind of like passing notes in class. You can just be like, here, just have a look at this and just whatever. It's very funny. I was working with the incredibly talented Neil Newbon who's Astarion's, the voice of Astarion, and the motion capture and so all the way that he moves, the poses, that's all Neil, and that's wonderful. Um, but Neil was recording this for I think about 4 years, and I never spoke directly to him once. The entire time, we actually had a very good relationship, but everything was me set was little bits of voice context, just being like, do it like this, do it like this, and then Neil's recordings would come back, and then I would listen to the recordings and be like, oh, this is great, he's doing something interesting with his voice. As I get his voice in my head, then that changes slightly how I write the character because now I can hear him. And there was a really interesting kind of feedback loop where we were both kind of giving each other this kind of energy. And it was only about a week before the game came out that we're like, this is ridiculous. We need to just have a call and just say hi and actually hang out. So we did that a couple of weeks ago. But it's a really rewarding relationship in a very strange. It's like the weirdest pen pal you've ever had.
I feel like nowadays, with everything that everyone has gone through and having a lot of the conversations over the internet and conversations over Zoom, people might be able to relate to that a little bit more of like, oh, this is someone that I've developed a working relationship with that I only know as a name in an email or a name on a social media. So I feel like nowadays that is definitely something that can happen, but I'm glad that the two of you were able to at least have a little bit of face-to-face time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was great. But no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we've all been through the ringer when it comes to actually hanging out with people, and yeah, no, it's a lot more normal than it would have been a few years ago.
As all these lines are getting recorded and you're getting this really amazing feedback about like, okay, here's the character that I've been working on and now I can hear them. Especially since you were all working on this game for quite a while, was there any point, because it sounded like you said there were little bits and where you're like, oh, he's doing something interesting here and, you know, it'll change a little bit. Was there like a major moment and where you went, oh, he did this in the voice line and this is something so cool and amazing that I've got to change this about the character?
There wasn't a whole lot of that. It was more like a constant slow evolution.
Mm.
So there probably was like quite major change, just over a much longer period of time. Um, there definitely was one point which is extremely spoiler heavy, so I won't get into it. But there was one point where I'd written kind of some fairly basic lines, and Neil just gave such emotion to them that it fundamentally changed the scene for me. So it does happen, but in cases like that, it's just really great to kind of watch someone who's very very good at what they do, just enjoy it. So it's yeah, it's a kind of a privilege to get to work with a lot of people that I do.
Now, I don't know a ton about this kind of video game writing. I have to imagine this isn't like writing a movie script or a TV script or a script, because you have to come up with, you know, here's Astarion reacting in 12 different ways to when the player character says these 12 different things. How do you parse all that emotionally for in a script? Like, how do you look at, okay, he has to say all these different things in this one conversation, but the emotions have to have this flow, this through line. Like, is that is are these chunks of scripts that are just like huge pages and like a choose your own adventure path, or is there like, all right, I'm going to go through this as though the player character said this, and I'm going to go through the player character as though the player character said that. Like, how does all that work?
I think I think you could ask like every single writer on the Larian team, and you'd probably get a slightly different answer from everyone. I think everyone has their own ways of handling it. The thing that I find most useful is I will write just something that's very nearly like a movie script, just kind of a relatively straight through line, like you said. And I'll be like, okay, this is how I imagine most of these conversations will go. This happens, this happens, this happens. And then you go back to the start and you're like, okay, well, if this happens, but then this other thing happens, do. And just carry on like that until you've covered all the bases. And then you will send it on for testing, and they'll come back and they'll be like, you forgot all these other things. And then you'll be like, okay, yeah, great, wonderful. And then you kind of just go through it again until it's as solid as you can make it, and there is as much player choice in there as you could. You have as many choices as hopefully as the players are going to want to make.
That's awesome. I think there's probably a lot of people like me who are really interested in that kind of storytelling, especially as we're all video game fans and nerds.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really specific skill set that I think is fascinating, and I love that you said, everybody kind of does it in a different way, but the fact that you're able to do that and then get this rich character that we can all interact with that can then change is such an amazing writing skill to have. Is that something that's just become a skill that you've developed working for Larian and working on these games, or is that something that you had to learn how to do? Like, how does one get into doing the thing that you do?
One does it very, very badly for a very long time, and then at some point you're less bad at it.
So like writing in general.
Yeah, like writing in general, or nearly anything in life.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a mindset that you need to that you get to just through practice. That's basically it. And there's much simpler kind of things out there. There's programs like Twine is a very, very simple like branching narrative kind of tool where you can just you'll see like dialogue where you can create your own dialogue trees, and you can see exactly that flow. You start here, and then these things could happen, and these things could happen, and you end up here, or here, or here. So it's something that anyone who I think starts working on these kind of games will take some time to get used to, because it's very, very different from any other form of writing that you have to do.
Absolutely. What was the name of that program again for those that might be interested? You said Twine?
Oh, sorry, Twine. Yeah.
Okay. I got to ask because I might be looking that up later. Excellent.
Yeah.
So one of the other cool things about these characters, while they are their own character and you can create your own origin character, they're also, you can just play as Astarion. You can just play as Lae'zel. What do you think are some of the positives and the drawbacks to playing as Astarion? Like if someone goes into it and is like, oh, this vampire guy is super cool, I want to be them. Like what's some of the cool things about doing it that way versus some of the drawbacks to doing it that way?
I mean, the cool thing is reactivity. The world is going to react to you differently because you're Astarion or because you're Lae'zel. I mean, we try to craft a world that reacts to you no matter what. If you create a generic GIF, if you're a tiefling, if you're kind of whatever you character you create, we want you to feel like the world is paying attention to you and is reacting to you differently. But if you're Astarion, if you're Lae'zel, there are people out there waiting for you in the game. You are going to bump into situations that you will just not kind of hit, or that will be very different if you're playing a generic character. So the fun of creating a generic character is you do get to you have ultimate freedom to make whatever you want. Because we've tried to keep, especially in character creation, but the whole way through the game, we try to keep it as true as possible to the tabletop experience. So if you want to be a halfling barbarian, you can be a halfling barbarian. If you want to be a half orc monk, like go nuts, go wild.
If you want to
Um,
be a dragonborn bard, just all the
yeah,
fun ones. All
exactly.
the dragonborn bards everywhere
All the dragonborn bards.
in
It's
all the
which is
different
just
colors.
yes. Um, but you will have a different, more tailored experience if you choose an origin character, and you're going to be more um, embedded in the story that plays out than if they were just a companion.
So now I have to ask, have you had a chance to play through bits or all of Baldur's Gate 3? And if so, what's your character of choice?
I've been playing a half orc barbarian.
Awesome.
Actually, just it's been a lot of fun. Little bit traditional, but then again, I can grab my companions and throw them across the map. Like it's just I couldn't not go for that.
Hmm.
I think on my next playthrough, possibly some sort of I really want to play a monk. I don't know what race, but yeah, I've been playtesting the game a lot, so it's been a trip. It's been great.
I've heard a lot about monks in the game and how much fun they can have, especially with traversal and getting across things, and then a specific pair of gloves that everybody seems to gravitate towards.
Hmm.
I've
Yeah.
heard I've heard some interesting things. I know you talked at the beginning about how the min maxing and the looking at the stats isn't necessarily where the fun is, but I do know some people who enjoy
Hmm.
finding those powers and flexing them in game
Yeah.
in a mechanical way. That can be a lot of fun. That can be fun to pick up your friends and throw them across the map.
No, it absolutely is, and I fully appreciate the min maxing kind of thing. I'm very prone to it myself. I try not to, but
Hmm.
But this is the thing. If you want that experience, it's in the game. If you wanted it a purely role play experience, that's also in the game. You can play it however you like.
I will admit that's one of the reasons that I picked Bard is because I wanted to make sure that I had as many dialogue options as possible. And so I figured go
Hmm.
for a charisma character. I mean, I also picked Bard for other fun reasons, but definitely when I was trying to choose what character, I was like, well, I want to be able to talk to everybody and try to have those persuasion and deception checks. So
Hmm.
go that way. But I think there must be something also fun about creating a character that is just kind of a very straightforward, not as charismatic, maybe not as deep as others, but is just going to have a really blunt playthrough. I suspect Lizelle
Hmm.
probably likes those characters a lot more than me.
Yes.
that has that has become an interesting thing that I've seen online of people comparing Lizelle and Astarion about
Mm.
how much more difficult it is to get one or the other to appreciate the decisions that you're making. Uh, is
Yeah, they
is
are. They're not two extremes, but there's a spectrum, and they are not on the same end. It's yeah, but that's the fun of it as well. Just having a party that where half of them are going to look at you askance, and the other half are going to be like, "Yeah, you kicked him off a cliff. That was hilarious." So,
and I love that because I love watching all of the different reactions to all the other party members when you're having a conversation and you're just it's amazing to me to watch like some of the background stuff that's happening and you'll see a character in the
mhm.
background just kind of raise an eyebrow and be like and then you see that little thing pop up, so and so
Yeah,
disapproves. It's like, well, fine, I guess.
yeah. You can't keep everyone happy all of the time. It's just yeah, no. It's just about striking some sort of balance.
Oh, absolutely. When it comes to, I mean, Lizelle is a little more of an extreme example, but Astarion, like you said, has some qualities that are a little more evil than
Hmm.
others. When it comes to striking that balance, when you're working on Astarion and he's got his bad points and his good points, but you don't necessarily, I would assume, want him to be so extreme that a player character can't at least keep him mostly happy, even if they're going to be diametrically opposed to what he wants to do. Is
Yeah.
that something that you're thinking about when you're crafting his character? Of like, okay, I want him to be, I want there to be some friction there. I want him to have these opinions and these actions that are maybe not the most good,
Hmm.
but that he's not necessarily just going to immediately leave the party because you decided to go save something and he didn't want to.
Yeah, that it's very tricky to balance the character approves or disapproves and kind of what the consequences of that are. The main thing is that you don't really want to write anyone that's just straight up a monster. I mean, like all of the characters are relatable on some level. All of the characters are kind of are people that you can connect with on some level. So there's it's important to have that humanity in all of them. And because you have that humanity in all of them, there's always going to be stuff where, like you say, maybe you disagree about stabbing that particular kobold or whatever, but it's it's important that if there is a disagreement that's so big that someone might want to leave the party, that comes at a really heightened personal cost. Like it needs to be something that's kind of very, very central to that character. Um, and something that's very important to that character. So for the most part, we try to avoid, yeah, we try to be very mindful of situations where you're going to be so opposed to each other that it's going to cause like an actual rift,
Mm.
like where you'll actually fall out with the person. But it's like I say, we're never writing kind of straight up horrible people, like horrible monsters. Um, so that it doesn't come up as often as you think, which is kind of nice.
And I think it's actually a beautiful example of how to play an evil character, evil in quotes, or in
Mm.
reality, in a D&D game, because that is something that can come up with players who will want to play evil but still want to be a part of an adventuring group, but still a part of a table and get along. And I think it can be difficult for some people to kind of grab onto, well, how do I play an evil character, which
Hmm.
is basically a selfish character, without alienating the rest of my table, without alienating the rest of these people. And I
Yeah,
think these characters in specific kind of show that path of like, all right, are these good people? Maybe, maybe not. But I can always understand their motivations and they want to hang out with me. They don't want to leave the
yeah,
party. So I feel like pointing people towards this game and saying, well, you really want to play an evil character? Why don't you go play this for a while and take some
hmm,
notes?
yeah.
Take some notes on how to get along with people.
That
Uh,
would be great. Yeah, if anyone, I mean, I'd be a little horrified if anyone pulls up some of our characters and some of the situations as something to aspire to. But no, it's we have a really good dynamic. We worked very hard to make sure that the characters worked as a group, no matter what the configuration of that group was.
mm,
So it's again, you're all a party, you're all on the same team, and it's important that everyone can, even if you're say taking slightly different paths, everyone moves in roughly the same direction, and people are not necessarily trying to get on, but no one is trying to ruin anyone else's fun. Like everyone is there to have a good time, everyone's there to have fun, and it's like anyone sitting around a table playing D&D. That's the thing that you're there for. You're there to have a good time. You're there to spend some time with your friends, and as close as we can emulate that in the game, we're going to be very happy.
is there one thing about this game that you are the most proud of? If you can point to one thing and be like, yeah, that's that's cool. What would that be?
Well, um, there's I'm very, very proud of the kind of climactic scene in Astarion's story. We won't get into it because spoilers. But it was a scene that I kind of, I don't know, I saw at every stage of completion. Like I saw it at the writing stage when it was just text. I'm like, okay, I think this is all right. I think this works. And then I saw it with the voice acting. I was like, oh, that's pretty good actually. This is great. And then I saw it with the cinematics. I'm like, wow, this is actually very good. And then uh, it wasn't too long before the game came out when I saw a final version of it with the music and everything, and I had to step away from the computer and have a little emotional moment.
Aw.
Um, but no, I'm very proud of that. Also, there's a point where you can punch a Starion in the face, and I'm extremely pleased about that. That's that's actually that one might be my favorite part. That might yeah. No, we'll go with the punching a Starion in the face.
That's the quintessential D&D dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you love about D&D? Oh, I had this amazing emotional moment that was very central to my character and the other characters, and we had this amazing just scene that was full of emotions. Also, I punched someone in the face. It was great. That's
Yeah,
essentially D&D right there.
that's it. That's the experience. That's yeah, and that's what I have. That's what I have the most fun with. The big fight and devotional scenes, and also just being real stupid.
So my final question, and if we need to put a spoiler warning up, I will. I'll put something on the
Mhm.
screen. So you just talked about the thing that you're the most proud of. When it comes specifically to Astarion, if you had to give advice to someone who is playing the game of like, hey, why don't you try doing this cool thing with Astarion? What would you say to somebody? If you had to like give them
Ooh.
a suggestion. And for this, if you go into spoiler territory, I'll put a little spoiler warning down here
Mhm.
so people know what's going on.
Um, oh God, that one is genuinely tricky. I
Save the most difficult one for last.
yeah, no, exactly. Um, Relatively early in the game, there is a scene where Astarion will sneak up to you during the night and try to have a sneaky nibble on your neck, and that scene can go a bunch of different ways. I think people will probably get the most out of that scene if you do actually let him bite you. I think that would probably be like the one thing. I really don't want to tell people what to do, but I'm like, there's a bunch of consequences if you let him bite you, and a lot of it is quite fun. So probably that. Um, yeah, but ultimately, I go out and have fun. Like go and make all the mistakes and play the messy character paths and have an experience. That's basically all I want from people in the game.
I think that's a great suggestion because of the fact that it's less about the actual specifics of that event and more, oh, if you do this, it just opens up a whole world of possibilities. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. And unfortunately, I don't have any other questions that I can ask because we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining me and talking about your baby and talking about this amazing game. If people wanted to follow the stuff that you're doing and see your feed full of Astarion fan art and cosplay, where can people find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter at oh, this is where the horrible name that you come up with as a teenager comes back to bite you. I'm on Twitter as Nuckpang, Nuckpang, and that is where you will see me retweeting and just constantly being amazed by cosplay and fan art and just reveling in how much fun people are having.
Awesome. Definitely go follow and revel as well in all of the awesome Astarion fan art and cosplay,
Hmm.
and enjoy playing Baldur's Gate 3 and enjoy having these two champions in our game where you can have them both in the same formation and don't have to worry about anything untoward happening or making them upset. They're all just happy in our formation going through the game. But thank you so much
Exactly.
for joining me. This has been awesome. And we'll see you next encounter.
This has
Bye.
been great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Bye.
you.